Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Jurassic Park, starring Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough, Bob Peck, Martin Ferrero, B.D. Wong, Samuel L. Jackson, Wayne Knight, and Joseph Mazzallo, and directed by Steven Spielberg. Now, I just want to say something before I get into this series. I remember growing up with these movies from when I was like a kid, like 4 or 5 years old, something like that. And I always thought this movie was called Dinosaurs Rex. No joke. This is for real. And I watched these movie like pretty much a lot of times. And there were some things that, well, I'll talk about it in the show. But I grew up with this movie as a kid pretty much. So let's get into it. The score by John Williams is amazing and memorable. But the opening 5 minutes was very intense and haunting. And it is a fantastic score. I love the score in this movie, and that opening scene is really scary with the velociraptor eating up the construction Jurassic Park worker, which I'll get to the park in a few minutes. And one of the guys says, "Shoot her! Shoot her!" And they do shoot them. Got me on the hook and scared when I was a kid, and it still does it to this day, I must confess. I mean, this is really, really scary stuff. Dr. Alan Grant, played by Sam Neill, and his girlfriend Ellie, played by Laura Dern, have good chemistry together when they're on scenes together, and when they're digging fossils together. I really like those characters, and John Hammond, played by Richard Attenborough, who owns Jurassic Park, and I like this character's arc of how he wants to show the park to Alan and Ellie. Hammond's employee Dennis Nedry, played by Wayne Knight, known as Newman from Seinfeld, and I like how he laughs, but the character is evil, but I like him in this movie despite if he does evil things and because he's evil in this movie. Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum, is a character. Welcome back, by the way, Jeff Goldblum from Wes Anderson and Marvel. I can relate to because he's charismatic, funny, and just a great character, and he's going to be in the new Jurassic World, so I'm curious to know what they do here with him. I love where they shot this in a Hawaii island, Kauai. It's such a beautiful location with beautiful shots, and Spielberg shows gorgeous shots in this movie. I'll talk about one of them in about another minute or two. It's just beautiful, and I love the ride and the million John Hammonds, and Mr. DNA as an animated ride was a bit of a groaner, but as an adult. But I still have fun with it, to be quite clear. I love the hatching of baby velociraptors. It's a great scene, and it's a great scene in this movie, and B.D. Wong is in this scene playing Wu, I believe is his name, Henry Wu, who will be in Jurassic World 1 and 2, and I like him in this movie for what little he does in here. Tim and Lex are Hammond's grandkids, who Alan is reluctant about them at the beginning, but they do grow on him in the audience as characters and as people by the end of this movie. And at first, I was reluctant about them at first, but they grew on me as characters as well to me. Ray Arnold, played by Samuel L. Jackson, has the best and classic line, "Hold on to your butts." And I'm such a fan of Samuel Jackson, and he has the best line of what little he does in this movie. I love the tour in Jurassic Park. I think the place looks neat in the daytime, but with the meat, why do they choose animals? I may be okay with it, but I'm an animal lover, except for coyotes, because I'll shoot them bastards. Excuse my French. I love the scene when the Triceratops and a big pile of shit that's giant, please again excuse my French. I just think the Triceratops scene was a neat scene when Alan feels it breathing, and the pile of crap scene was funny, and when Ellie digs through it with gloves and Ian says to her, "Remember to wash your hands before you eat something." Absolutely hilarious. I love when Samuel Jackson puts in Newman's password, or Dennis's password, and and he's unsuccessful, and Dennis says, you didn't say the magic word. And Samuel Jackson gets frustrated, and just the way Dennis says, you didn't say the magic word, was pretty funny, in my opinion. Because I always enjoyed that as a... I don't know how you do that, but I'm curious to know how you go, you didn't say the magic word. We get to the most intense and best scene in the movie, with the Tyrannosaurus Rex attacking Alan, Ian, Tim, and Lex. Well, barely Ian. And eats the blood-sucking lawyer, from what Hammond said earlier in the movie. I don't really remember his name off the top of my head. While in the bathroom, and he attacks the other three in the car, and Ian almost tries to save the day with the flare, but gets knocked out unconscious. And he gets found by Ellie later in the movie, but the stunt when Alan, Lex, and Tim have a car almost hitting them was pretty intense. Well, mostly Alan and Lex. Tim was in the car at the time. Hitting them was pretty intense, and the fall was a spectacularly intense scene. I must confess that now. Dennis gets encountered by a little dinosaur that attacks him. Did freak me out as a kid, but now I realize Dennis got what he deserved after what he did to Hammond and shutting down the security systems. So I was okay with that death. That scene with the singing long necks, and I'm quoting the long necks from Land Before Time, so please forgive me for that, and the sunset was a great shot and a beautiful looking scene, and the Vegisaurus seemed like nice dinosaurs, even though they're ginormous, and the scene when one of the Vegisauruses goes up to Alan, Tim, and Lex, and eats the leaves on the tree and sneezes on Lex, and Tim says, "God bless you," was very good and a funny scene in my opinion. A trail of Galapines, I think that's what they're called, running, and all of a sudden a T-Rex comes up to eat one of them, was a spectacular scene with intensity. Here comes more intensity. Oh boy, where do they come about it? When Alan, Tim, and Lex climb on an electrical fence, and Tim falls down, and he almost dies. I worried about Tim, but when he got shocked, the body falling down looked like a fake puppet that knew how to land. Alan, Tim, and Lex get back to the building, and Alan finds Ellie and reunites with her. Ian and John, which is a nice reunion. And Tim and Lex getting attacked by velociraptors in the kitchen was a pretty damn scary scene when Tim and Lex reunite with Alan and Ellie and go to the room that turns into the system of Jurassic Park and got it on, including the phones, and the velociraptors chased them all from the tubes up in the ceilings to the dinosaur bones to the lobby, and almost get killed until the T-Rex saved their asses. Again, excuse my French. And they get the hell off the island, and they go into the sunset, realizing Alan wants kids. Now, and the credits roll, and that has, as an ending, was, well, beautifully done. And in case if you don't know what happened to Samuel Jackson, he did get eaten off screen by a velociraptor. And I thought, oh my god, I just realized that in this viewing. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 9.0 out of 10. This movie I grew up with as a kid, and I love it then and I love it now. The John Williams score is fantastic, and I love the intensity of the dinosaur scenes, and Spielberg does a great job with the story and these characters. It's also a very intense classic. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with The Lost World Jurassic Park leading up to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. But we'll get to that one in about another month or so. But right now, next week is The Lost World Jurassic Park. And I remember seeing this in theaters as a kid. But I'll talk more about that next week. And until next time, hold on to your butts.